Hey guys, welcome to the Live, Live, Play podcast powered by the Brand X Method. We have partnered up with the Brand X Method to bring you a lot of content and a lot of information on youth fitness and how to become good coaches, understanding children's wellness, mental health, physical health, emotional health. And we have a lot of great shows lined up for you that will be powered and inspired by the Brand X Method. On today's show, we are talking about sports specialization. And I have none other than co-founder Jeff Martin, who has over 30 years of experience working with youths, 20 years working in the functional fitness realm, and literally is he's a pioneer, but also one of the most educated and just generally really good people on this planet that are helping youths understand that there's more to them and helping them build mental resilience. As we start the show, we're just getting straight into the conversation. So bear with us. You'll be catching up. The start of this conversation will be about injuries that are happening in youths and how we can deal with that. Please, guys, if you love the show and are a fan, definitely give us a like, a thumbs up, leave us a good comment, and don't forget to subscribe. And as I said, we're going to be having lots more content coming your way from the Live, Live, Play podcast every single week and powered by the Brand X Method. Enjoy the show. You're listening to the Live, Live, Play podcast powered by the Brand X Method, world leaders in youth strength and conditioning.
But it's a good starting point, I think, for us to talk about sport and what's going on in sport and why, the travails that we see happening with sports specialization and injury and things like that. And let me start by asking you a question.
Yeah.
Do you know the injury rate, the percentage of kids, or the rise in injury rate requiring Tommy John surgery in Ireland?
I don't think there
right.
is a big one.
Right. So that's a great starting point for us. So Tommy John surgery in Ireland is non-existent.
Yeah.
And yet in the U.S., it's increased in the last 10 years. It's increased by 500% in children between the ages of 12 and 19. And it is. So Tommy John surgery only happens with kids who pitch too much or throw too much and end up injuring their arm. It's simple. It is such a simple illustration of overuse injury in sport and the ills of what's going on in sport. When I talk to somebody from outside the U.S. and I say, "Hey, what's Tommy John surgery like in your country?" You're going like, "I don't even know what Tommy John surgery is." And it's because you don't have a sport where you're taking a 6-year-old, having them do that same sport over and over again, increasing the time during the year that they play that sport, and increasing the amount of specialization that happens. And that's what happens in baseball here in the U.S. It happens in soccer, baseball, generally football. Those are the big three here in the U.S. But we have specific injuries that we see coming out of those sports that used to only happen at the professional level.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing, 8-year-olds getting Tommy John surgery. Well, how crazy is that?
Well, that's it. And that's kind of like, it's kind of like on the first kind of part of the question is, like I was like saying, like sports are a great way for children to learn, to meet people, from camaraderie, understand discipline. But there is a dark side to sports, which is too often overlooked. And as you said, we spoke about this before, and I know you spoke about the seminar, is that you show us the ad of the family and the kid in crutches, the girl with the ACL tear, well, assuming an ACL knee tear or something. And only in Ireland, actually, last month in October, I seen an ad for health insurance where there's a girl having surgery or just out of surgery, from sport, because that's the norm now. And we are seeing that in Ireland a little bit more. So from your, like, obviously from your history, like just from your experience, the dark side of sports is, as much as like, I condone sports. It's like, I think it's great and we all should play a multi-sport, but there is a dark side to it that no one really gets told about.
Well, there is. And I think that, first of all, let's start, because both you and I support sport. You have a sporting background. I have a long sporting background. We came out of the martial arts, which is, and that's our history. That's our background. We encourage kids to play sport, but like you said, multiple sports. And, I know your gym turns out excellent athletes, and has athletes competing at the top levels in your country for youth sports. But what you do is the basis of that. You build children who can then take advantage of that strength in whatever sport that they're in. You teach kids how to move well so they can take sports and move and do well in a sport. But what I want to do whenever we start down a topic like this, it's best for us to make sure that people understand that we support kids being in sport.
We're not anti-sports in any way, shape, or form.
But what happens is we start down this topic, and the first thing people go like, well, they're anti-sport. We're not. In fact, what we do is to build kids so that they can be better at their sport and take and be involved in as many sports as possible and be safer in sport. I love the saying that what we do makes kids stronger, faster, and more durable. And that is applied to their sport. So having said that, what we're seeing now is kind of a confluence of a lot of things. In that, let's say the rise of screen time, where kids are no longer playing outside, and then we're seeing so that's taking away from their natural movement and their natural ability to interface and do a lot of different movement. And then we have on the other side of that, we have a sporting culture that is driving professionalization earlier and earlier with kids. So we'll have coaches talking to 6-year-olds over here. We'll have coaches talking to 6-year-olds saying, if you want to play in high school, you're probably going to need to pick soccer as your only sport, when you're 6 or 7 years old, and that's dangerous. And it is dangerous because it confines the kid to a single track. There's only certain movements in that sport, and that's what the kids gets good at. And all of the, kind of two tracks. Number one, that it confines their movement. Number two, we're seeing the rise in injuries. We can kind of directly track to this professionalization, and research is now saying things. There was a recent article by Avery Fagenbaum, and the title of the study was "Your Kids Are Not Strong Enough to Play Sport." And then there's the rise in injuries, and then there's the research that shows that the kids who do specialize, number one, never hit their genetic potential, and number two, coaches at the upper levels in the university or college level are looking for multi-sport athletes to play to bring onto their teams. So this trend, I guess the overall topic then, the trend of this professionalization, this picking a sport, single sport, and doing that single sport is something we're seeing. We have been seeing rise for the last 10 to 15 years. And from that outcome, what we're seeing is things that are detrimental to kids long term.
Yeah. And and then leading on into that, we see it here in Ireland already. We see it in football. I've seen it a fair bit in football. I'm dealing with it with basketball. I'm dealing with 14, 15, 16-year-olds with bad knees, bad hips, bad backs. And it's like growing pains of actually it's not. An example, we had a camp, and one of the girls is like, "Oh, I can't squat because of my knees." And I was like, "Well, show me what you do." And the squat mechanics, the girl was very athletic. She was fit. I think she was 15 years of age, but when she squatted, she got pain in her knees. So we showed her how to squat properly, and guess what? She had no pain in her knee.
Right.
And I was like, who taught you to squat? Oh, well, nobody. I was like, exactly. So what do you expect? But the other thing I wanted to kind of lead to was that when you specialize a child, and we, again, this is coming from a conversation we had before, mentally then, if they're the best at 12, 13, eventually, firstly, if they don't burn out and get bored of the sport, they're going to then not be the best. And to a 13, 14-year-old, when you've been the best since you're 6, so you've had a training age of 6 years, and then you're no longer the top dog, like mentally, emotionally, that's detrimental to a child.
Sure. And if they've been told they're the best from the time they're 6 to the time they're 13, they've never really developed resiliency.
Yes.
Kids need, and that's one of the things I love about Brand X gyms is you can, beyond teaching someone how to squat and beyond making them safe when they hinge, what we teach is, these hugely important character traits, the resiliency. So a child who is good at running may not be great at pulling off the ground.
Yeah.
So he's got to work hard at that. The kid who pulls off the ground great may not be great at running, and he's got to kind of learn to accept that and learn that he's got to work hard at those things. That's hugely important. In the U.S., one of our guys who writes for us, Dan Edelman, was talking to me a couple of years ago about something I had no idea, that there are forums, internet forums, where young players are ranked. So in baseball, so you get a 11-year-old and he's ranked, I'm the 10th best catcher in the US at 11 years old. And number one, that's horrible, because this kid is now going, like, you have no idea. Maybe he grew quickly and he's the biggest kid at 10 years old or 11 years old. And he's never going to grow again. And so now, and this is horrible to rank kids like this and to have them have a perception of themselves as ranked or something at that age. And secondarily, the mindset of a parent to start to allow his child to be ranked like that. And then there's these parents apparently who get on and argue about the rankings. And what's that say about parents involved with the whole thing?
That's the kind of, I remember watching that show, Trophy Kids.
Oh, Trophy.
Yeah. That was
Chris
brilliant.
Bell.
Yeah.
I brought tears to my eyes. Seriously, it was horrible watching what was going on.
And it's parents living through their kids. Like, it's living their failed athletic triumphs, or they're trying to relive it. And it's not about them. And I always said, like, obviously, like you obviously your boys are all grown up, and I know Duncan's gone from multi-sport to like, he can pretty much walk into anything and does very well at it. But like, if my son doesn't want to he will know how to lift weights. But if he decides, hey, Dad, I want to be a ballerina, I'm going, okay, that's what you want to do. But we'll train you to be the best ballerina. And then if you decide you want to move on, then we'll be okay with that too, because it's your life, not mine. And as much as I'd like you to go possibly play rugby or basketball, you mightn't like those sports. Like, I grew up in a football household and I didn't want to play football or soccer. So it was kind of looked down on. And when I wanted to play basketball, I was like, why would you want to play this sport? I was like, because I enjoy it. And that's the mentality I think we need to, like, parents need to kind of look at a bit more.
And I really think that, I want two stories. One, you mentioned Duncan and kind of how he went through, played rugby in high school, pole vaulted in high school, walked onto the cheer team and made a varsity university cheer team his freshman year. And last year they placed 5th in the country on whatever they do for the competition.
Yeah.
But he sent me a video last night, and he said, like, hey, I've been going to a rock climbing gym. And I was, well, that's cool. I mean, he weighs 200 pounds. He's a big kid now, and he sent me a video, and he's going up this rock climbing and goes up, kind of gets to a angled shelf, and all of a sudden he leaps off the shelf, grabs the thing. What? You look like a professional rock climber. What the heck? It's like the most ridiculous thing in the world. I just decided to do that. Well, okay. But that's what we're trying to build. I got another email. You met her, Sophie.
Yeah.
An email last night from or text from Sophie, and she said, "Hey, Coach Jeff, I'm not going to be able to do. We had some plans for over the summer for do some things, and she said, I've decided to ride my bike across the country with a group of students here."
Okay.
And yeah, okay. You're not a bike rider, right? Yeah, it's no problem. But that's the kind of success, or that's how we measure success.
Yeah.
As a brand X coach, and how you should, I think Sophie's parents should measure success that way too. Sophie walked on to her university, never having rowed, and made the rowing team at her university.
And that was for anyone listening, that was at MIT. Was it MIT?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
It wasn't just any university, it was at MIT. No. That's a big, it's a big dog, like.
Right. And so I guess what I'm saying is kind of as a bolstering your point, it doesn't matter what sports our kids play. They need to be confident,
yes,
and motivated to play a sport. And then when they pick a sport, that's awesome. But our job is to provide them tools as trainers, is to provide them tools so that when they're done with that sport, whether it is the sport's done with them or they've decided I want to move on, that they can look at something else in life and go like, I'm going right to that. I'm going to ride my bike across the country. Well, the U.S. is kind of big.
Yeah, like I don't want to cycle the length of Ireland, and that would fit in your state multiple times.
I'm thinking about riding my bike to the store. That's such an effort. But that's the point, and the point, should be proud of that as a trainer, and proud of that as Sophie's parents.
Yeah.
Going like, my daughter is capable of doing whatever she wants to do, and we've supported her in a sense so that she feels confident to be able to go and do those things.
And I think that, like you said, like if you're done with sport or if sport's done with you, and that's another point, that no matter what sport you're going to play, eventually it becomes the competitive edge and the best player will play. I know as younger kids and all that, it's all inclusive and everyone gets a game and everyone gets on, but eventually it will be the best player plays. And you can be dropped. And I know of a player years ago, broke his arm, was playing rugby for the national team, broke his arm, and he couldn't get back in time. And the guy that replaced him took his place, and he was literally like, that's it, you're done, see you later, bye-bye, sorry about that, you broke your arm. But we have 10 more kids a year younger that don't have broken arms, and they want your spot, and they're hungry for it. And I think that is, as much as sports are inclusive, it will become a point where you're dropped. Like last year, we had one of our girls dropped from the national team. She just wasn't picked. Now, she's remade the team. She put in the hard work. She changed what she was weaker at, and she's remade it. But she would, like, that was a very hard experience for her and that just goes to show, like, listen, you're great, we like you, but we don't want you. We want someone else that can do it a little bit better than you. And I think that's, as you said originally, resilience. If kids don't have resilience, then it's going to hurt them when these things happen to them in sport.
Well, if we take the model of professionalization being pushed down, first of all, you start to see it being overdone with children. They're being over professionalized. And what I mean by that is that if you go to a rugby team and they're a professional rugby team, they'll play their season, and then their coaches will usually mandate an off season. Like, you are not allowed to pick up a ball for 2 months, and you are not allowed to do this. You go into the gym, you work out, go find something else to do, but you're not allowed to play rugby. Yeah. And with kids now, they're told, the season's over. There's going to be a spring league. There's going to be stuff between seasons. You can get a private coach to train you. So they're being over professionalized. So if we're taking that model and you're talking about professionalization coming down and being over professionalized, then it makes sense that other things are going to start to seep down. Professional sports is a business. So if you run slower and your stats are than somebody else, and your stats are worse than somebody else, you're cut. Not It's not personal. It's a business.
Yeah.
It's simply a business. But that stuff starts to seep down into the kids' range.
And you're training kids like the high-end athlete, which
right.
Again, if it's a job as a high-end athlete, it's like, well, I'll pay you such $1 million a year if you perform. If you don't perform, you get dropped. Okay, that's the deal. And you walk in knowing that. As a teenager, we want you to perform like the high-end athlete. We're not paying you anything, and you have to sacrifice everything. And then you end up broken, and you're brushed to the side.
Right. You are, it is kind of the antithesis of what we envision a coach should be doing. A coach's job is always to look out for what is best for the child.
Yes.
And what's one of the blessings of being a coach without a sport. In other words, I'm the guy in the gym teaching people how to lift weights and move well. Is that my job revolves around those kids getting better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't revolve around them winning something or being the best at something. It's just, I got to prove that they're better from this month to this month to this month to this month. And I think that you start pushing that professionalization down. Coaches start to look at, well, I won't be able to coach next year if we don't have a winning season. This kid's going to, I'm not going to spend the time with this kid because he's not going to produce for me. So I'll spend, and that becomes dangerous.
And that can lead to, like, with a lot of kids, especially younger kids, or like a kind of pre-teens, teens that mightn't be the best at the sport, but it's not because they don't have the want or the drive. It's they don't have the fundamental basic movements to understand how to move. And then you can teach that to them, and then they can excel when they're 13, 14, 15. They just need a little bit more attention because their body, they don't have the natural coordination in movement, which is a lot of people that we see don't have natural coordination. But then once they start finding out how to move, they understand that it becomes easier for them. Then they start excelling in their sports. And I think that is a big aspect, because kids or teens would be dropped too quickly without going, well, what's wrong? Like, the kid's got the heart, it's got the size, got the ability, just can't move well, can't run fast enough. What's wrong? And they're like, well, run faster. To run faster, and run more often. Or as well, there's an imbalance there somewhere. So let's have a look at that and let's see what we can do. And like, you see it time and time again, like a kid, like he's maybe 18, 19. The one that pops into my head all the time is like, and I know he's a bit of a kook, but Dennis Rodman started playing NBA basketball very late in his career, and then made the NBA. And it's happened with rugby players in their like early 20s, eventually then make the national team or the province team. But all through their teens, they were kind of looked down on or passed by, but they kept working and they developed. And eventually, because they got to work from the right people who believed in them, and eventually they got there. I think that's a big thing that's overlooked, especially with kids that are not naturally coordinated, but if you put the work in with them, they learn how to move. They can excel in most sports. Like you say, Duncan, and like, not that he wasn't naturally coordinated, or Sophie, they can walk on to most things and perform well. If they decided that one of them was going to be their be all and end all, they know how to train for that, and they know how to avoid the overuse injury that comes with that as well, because of their learning process and from learning in a Brand X training center like the original, like you guys. So I think that's huge.
Well, I think there's kind of a multi that point's multifaceted. When you, and then I'll swing back to that, but let's kind of discuss the idea of children like seeking the best team lifter in the nation at 13. Well, that self-selects for kids who are born earlier in the year, and also self-selects for kids who have who developed early.
Yeah.
So your kid is the best. I had the strongest kid at 14 years old at in XYZ. Well, that just doesn't tell you that he's going to be good when he's 21.
Yeah.
Or 27, or it just tells me that he developed faster and he's stronger and bigger than the other kids at 13. that's not a healthy thing to pursue.
Mm.
And we kind of need to keep that in mind when we start talking about like the fittest on earth. We want to really, it's just not a healthy place to go when we're talking about the fittest 14-year-old, because that puts a lot of pressure on the 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And also that 14-year-old might be there because they're just bigger and stronger than other 14-year-olds, that are, they've had a whole nother year. Maybe they were born earlier, so they're a whole nother year to develop.
Yeah.
Secondarily, your point, that's kind of back to the beginning of our discussion, with the introduction of more screen time, the taking out of PE out of schools in the U.S., what we're seeing is kids who have lost access to the library of human movement.
Yeah.
And so you have these kids coming in who want to play a sport. They hit high school or they hit secondary school, and they go out for the sport, but they don't have all of the requisite movements, standard human movement that are necessary to play safely in that sport.
Yeah.
And so they need a strength and conditioning and movement coach at the base of their training. Like, I can teach you how to skip. I can teach you how to bear crawl. I can teach you how to side shuffle correctly and safely. And then we can work to make that your standard movement. But problematically, kids are not coming into our gyms anymore with all of those movements.
And like, as you said, like, with the screen time, and again, this is something that you like yourself and Brandex, you speak about at seminars or any online webinar that we've done, is that kids would be on a screen and then they go from doing nothing into sport, and then back to doing nothing. So there's no actual play and a roughhousing. And even the article you shared from James about being a rough and tumble, like wrestling and just boys being boys. Yeah, it doesn't happen anymore, which is a huge aspect of development for kids.
And it hugely leaves kids, or it leaves kids vulnerable. Keegan made the point early on in the Brandex seminars that because of these things, kids who play sport are actually more vulnerable than the kids who we might see as maybe overweight and not doing anything or out of shape. And he said, all of the kids now spend time in this, crunched over position, and then you take these kids who are athletic and you take them from school, and they're doing their screen time. They take them from school, just like you said, and you plop them into a sport, and now they're supposed to be athletic, and their bodies aren't ready for that, and it's entirely our culture's fault. So we need to find out how we're going to fix that.
And even I said, I was on the radio, the local radio the other day, and they were talking about it was a podcast I did earlier about obesity in children, and they were saying I actually got to the point. I said, if we played multi-sports and we did what we're meant to be doing as humans, there would be no need for me. And the presenter was like, so you would like to put yourself out of a job? Well, if it was the case that the nation was better, there's always, like, obviously we'd work with like strength and conditioning and stuff like that always, but if kids had multi-play, multi-sports, multi-everything, and they were moving more the way we're designed to move, like they climbed, they ran, they rolled, they tumbled, did all that stuff, then like we wouldn't really need to exist. And that's for everyone, like as adults. There'd be no need for gyms if we were all as active as we're meant to be.
As we should be.
Yeah, I know that's not the case. But
I grew up. I was a child. I grew up quite a long time ago. When I went to elementary school in the 1960s, that's way back when. And physical education was different when I was growing up. And I first of all, I had to walk to school 10 miles both ways in the snow barefoot, but carrying rocks, because that's what we rode on back then. But we actually had a teacher who had learned about physical education and learned how to teach physical education to children come to our school 2 or 3 times a week. And I remember we did, all things. I did vaulting, we did rings, I did trampoline, we did tumbling, we did track. I learned to throw shot put, discus when I was like 5 years old. I mean, this is or 5th grade, 6th grade, things like that. And those lessons stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like the first time I remember, the first time I'd seen rings since I was probably in primary school was when I was 43 and walked into my first gym where they had rings, and someone said, "Hey, let's do a muscle up," and I did it the first time. Well, it wasn't because I was so strong and so great. It was because I'd had exposure back when I was a child, and I went, "Oh yeah, here." Oh, and I got over the top, and I went like, "Oh, I got to keep the rings close to me because it's unstable." And while everybody else was like falling all over the place, I kept the rings close and finished the movement.
You knew what to do, yeah.
The point is that really what we're trying to encompass as Brand X coaches for our Explore and Early Express groups is to be PE teachers. We want to physically educate children. How do you control your body in space?
Yes.
How do you move? We hinge at the hip. We don't bend at the SI joint when we pick something up off the ground. And then we want to apply that to things. So, a kid who learns how to hinge at the hips can now learn how to throw something light, explosively with the hips, and that's taking it from a gym movement to something that we might do outside of the gym. So we want to be PE teachers, and I'm not. I don't want a PE teacher to hear this and then go like, "Well, I've gone through school and done a lot of training to be a PE teacher." What I'm saying is, we're physical educators teaching kids how to move well. Our gyms are not places where we're trying to get kids good at gymming. Yes. We want to use the gym to be good at all the things outside of the gym, and that requires that kids move well, and then they move safely, and then they're strong enough to do the things that they want to do.
Yeah, I think, like, personally, I think schools should be mandatory fitness every single day, because we know that it helps their cognitive abilities. We know it helps their resilience during like anxiety, depression. We know exercise does this, but it comes back to that the person teaching it needs to be excited about it, because if they're not excited about it, it's like if you go to a Starbucks and the guy in Starbucks is like, "Hi, what you want?"
Yeah.
What's your name? Do you want takeaway? You're not really sold on him, and it's the same for schools. I think teachers, physical education teachers, need to be, "Hey, how are you? What can I get you today?" Like, has to be, because if you're excited about it, kids are going to be excited about it.
Well, let's start. I think part of that is, as a culture, we need to value physical education teachers.
Yes.
And really what we've done is go, well, we value the math teacher way more than we value the physical education teacher. And what we need to understand, I think, as a culture, is that great brain that wanders around, that knows how to do that math, is encompassed by the body that physical education teacher teaches how to be healthy and move well and enjoy movement. James was a PE teacher and graduated with physical education, and I think he speaks to this well. This is something that we as a culture need to change. We need to value what they do, and that will help them then be more excited about their job, because we just got a new training center, the Fort Mojave tribe here in the U.S. They built on their reservation. They built a school. They asked us to come over. They built a school across from their wellness center. So we've gone in and taught the wellness center how to run Brand X classes for kids. And then they asked us to come in with Dan Quisenberry from Brand X Nashville, and we came in and did a how to build PE using the Brand X method for the elementary school that built across the street. So all of these coaches and trainers at the wellness center go across the street, pick up the class, come into the wellness center. Kids work out, and then they go back. They have PE every day. And it was interesting that the chairman of the tribe, the week before the school opened, got a schedule of how the kids were going to work out, and each grade was going to work out. So third grade was going to work out twice a week.
Yeah.
And he marched over to the school and said, "Oh no! Every day, every class goes into the wellness center every day." And they built some rooms specifically for age appropriate. They've got like a ninja room for preteens and teens. It's unbelievable. They've got trampolines outside, but they've got things kids enjoy to do, and then they can also come in and teach them how to move. And it's really it is a unique situation, but it's a model of what PE could be and can be for kids.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree. I do believe that if you teach them that they can move their bodies, and I know you've seen it over the years, and I've seen it in my kids, is we get kids that can't tumble, and then they tumble, and it's like, oh my God. He's like, yeah, you can do so much. You actually have the potential to do pretty much anything. You just have to be willing to put in some work. Some things will be easy, some things will be hard. And teaching them that the hard part, and that's the resilience, is going to make them better. They're going to be better humans for it. They're going to just be stronger mentally, physically, and live a better, at the end of the day, the goal for anyone I work with is to impact them to live a better life. So their body will allow them to have a better life. But if you tell me you want to run a 100-mile race, I'm going, well, you're going to probably get messed up doing that and training for it. I don't think you should do it, but that's your goal. I'll advise you where to be. But if I can send our kids that graduate to teens, and our kids that are going to graduate to teens, they come in and they just lift and they have fun and they enjoy just training. They're not crazy sports specific. Some of them play other sports, but I like going to the gym, and I like socializing, and I like exercising. And if we go on a hike up Brayhead or we go to Glendalough, they're like, yeah, cool, no problem. And then they're like, do you want to run, coach? I'm like, no, not really.
Everybody give me your water bottles. I'll carry the water bottles.
Because I didn't have that ability. Yeah, Jeff says I don't.
It's in the coaching manual. Coaches don't have to run.
I qualify in the age bracket. I'm old enough.
Yeah, masters. Is there a master's division for this running? Yeah, that's funny. But it is true, and that's exactly what we hope for our coaches, right? That they're impacting kids in that way, that they're building a tribe, within the culture of their gym, where kids are coming in. That's what they're finding. One of the things that is so disturbing is if you watch and I know it's happening where you are. You go to a coffee shop and there's a group of 5 kids standing around, and what are they all doing? They're all on their phone like this, standing in a circle, texting. And they go like, well, who are you texting? Well, I'm texting her. Well, why are you texting her? She's right there. And the cool thing about the gym is, for that hour that they're there, one of the cool things about the gym is for the hour that they're there, they don't have their phone. They actually have to have interactions with each other. And then we can start to provide them the things that they don't get from free play anymore, and that they're losing from being screen time. We can provide them opportunities to work together on things and to negotiate and figure out how they're going to accomplish a task together. Those are all psychological and sociological skills that are being lost, that are necessary. And I think you're going to talk to Mickey next week about play, but
Yep.
And this is why these things are being lost, is because kids just don't play anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if people are listening, and like obviously with Brand X, it is obviously Brand X Center, and you can become a Brand X coach. For people that are listening that work with kids in any sport really, or a physical education teacher, or they're a personal trainer or a gym owner, and they're thinking about trying to start it, where would they go? What would be the first step for them to start on Brand X? And we'll put all links below to Brand X in the comments in the notes for the show.
Well, I think that first you can find out an awful lot from our Instagram account.
Yeah.
So you can go there, and there's an awful lot of discussion about what we're doing, who we are, and then our Instagram is at the Brand X Method. Our website is thebrandxmethod.com. But we're really accessible. I mean, you can get a hold of us on jeff@thebrandxmethod.com. I'll answer emails, I'll set up Zoom calls and talk to people. That's kind of my job at this point.
Cool. And as I said, we'll link everything below. But Jeff, firstly, thank you very much for being on the show. This is the first show that we're doing. The Live, Live, Play podcast is powered by the Brand X Method, and we have a whole host of shows coming along with some great conversations coming up. And we're going to have Jeff back on. We have Mickey, and everyone else associated with the Brand X Method, or is just helping kids perform and be better humans. We're going to have these on the show. We're hoping to kind of launch about like at least 2 a month that will be powered by the Brand X Method, which will be kid specific or teen specific. But Jeff, thank you very much for being on the show. And guys, if you please like and subscribe to Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube, and we'll see you all soon.